Support for Higher Education in Focus comes from the Penn State Alumni Association, serving alumni and alma mater for more than 145 years. On the web at alumni.psu.edu. Penn State Bookstore, now in an expanded location in the Hub Robeson Center. Improving the student experience at Penn State with philanthropic support of student causes throughout the university. PSECU, a credit union providing financial services to its members throughout Pennsylvania since 1934. More at psecu.com. And from viewers like you, thank you.
Penn State Intercollegiate Athletics is partnering with the architectural firm Populous to develop a comprehensive facilities master plan, a kind of roadmap to determine which of Penn State's 19 facilities need to be upgraded. Of major interest is whether to renovate or to do an entire rebuild of Beaver Stadium. What's driving the study? What input will fans have in the process? And what's the timetable? In this edition of Higher Education in Focus, Penn State President Eric Barron will tackle some of the major questions raised by the new athletics master plan. Here to talk with him about that is Sandy Barber, Penn State Director of Athletics, and Scott Radisik, Senior Principal at Populous. I'll be back later in the show to talk one-on-one with President Barron about how the athletics master plan will impact students. Now, here's Penn State President Eric Barron.
Thank you both for joining me today. This should be a lot of fun. Let's just start right off. We have a facilities master plan that we're putting together. What is it, Sandy, and why are we doing it?
Well, the facilities master plan is looking at every facility that touches student athletes at Penn State, our fans, so all of our competitive facilities, our everyday facilities. It's over 31 sports, over 20 facilities that are used for intercollegiate athletics and intercollegiate student athletes. And it's really, really important to the success of our programs across the board, to the success of our student athletes, for us to have the infrastructure that then not only helps them train every day, train their minds as well as their bodies, but also the Saturday or the Tuesday night facilities from a competitive standpoint that then takes into consideration our fan experience. So it's really, really important that we have world-class facilities for the success of our student athletes and for the experience of our fans.
So if we were going to be perfectly blunt, we'd say competitive on the field, toilets, do we have enough of them, and is our advising for academics and athletics the right kind of space? It's the full gamut.
It's the full gamut. It's every aspect of a student athlete's life, 24/7, 365, and then game day for our 31 sports.
Okay, and so you went out, hired Populous, Kansas City firm. Why did you hire them?
Well, first and foremost, Populous is the preeminent architectural design firm in the world. They've got incredible experience not only with intercollegiate facilities, but probably as of late, best known for Olympic sport facilities.
Which is incredibly important to us.
Which are very, very important to us, and very direct experience to what we're doing across the board with our 31 programs. And then finally is kind of a bonus, Scott Radisik, a Penn State alum, Penn State student athlete, is the principal in charge at Populous and of our project, and so certainly believe that brings an understanding of Penn State and a connectedness to the student athlete experience as well as the alum experience that I think is really important here.
So, Scott, you got a double compliment there. I hope your head's not getting swelled
I got a lot of compliments
being the top end firm. And also a Penn State alum, so you care deeply. Those are two pretty good characteristics to be including in here. But from your viewpoint, what does Populous bring to the table for our 31 sports?
Well, we've been in business for 32 years. We're the only design firm in the world that's dedicated just to designing sports facilities and assembly facilities. And we've got an entire group in our office that's been dedicated for that amount of time just working on college campuses. So we have an expertise of more than 30 years of working with athletic departments on college campuses And we've really worked hard to kind of invest in the business of collegiate athletics, as well as the experience from a fan's perspective and the experience from a student athlete's perspective, to make sure that we optimize all of those activities on college campuses. So we bring that kind of depth of resource and history to this project. And you know, when you work for your alma mater, there's a little bit higher level playing field here that people expect certain things from you.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Which makes you bring your A game to.
And do you point to particular facilities you're very proud of that you've been involved in?
Oh, we do actually, and you know, I've been doing this for 23 years. And so, you know, one of the buildings I'm most proud of is another building in the Big Ten, the TCF Bank Stadium at Minnesota. That was one of our projects. That was the first new stadium, over 50,000 seats in like 23 years. So it was a highly successful project, and we've worked for almost every school in the Big Ten in some capacity, whether we've been designing basketball practice facilities or football training centers or even doing athletic master plans. So we bring that knowledge to the table when we meet with coaches and administrators and even those consultants who work outside of the athletic department that have influence on athletic department activities. And right now we've been collecting data and having programming meetings, just understanding what's working well and what's not working well before we even put a pen to paper and start looking at ideas.
So if we took some examples of how facilities help improve success and help, quite frankly, from the viewpoint of improved budgeting to improved recruiting, and you were to pick a model at Penn State that you could say this dramatically shows what kind of impact facilities can have, what would you say?
I think if you look at our upwards of 20 facilities, you certainly have from one extreme to the other. You have Pegula Arena, which is our newest Penn State Intercollegiate Athletics facility, which has obviously brought our hockey programs alive from both
truly alive
from both a competitive standpoint, and you look at that facility and it is our student athletes have the opportunity to do everything they need to do from an athletic standpoint in that building. It's all there. It is a very efficient use of their time. And then from a fan standpoint, obviously a great arena that frankly our community and our fans have brought alive. The other end of our spectrum from an age standpoint is let's say McCoy Natatorium, probably in the need of the most upgrade, not only from the actual structure in the pool that our student athletes swim in, compete in, train in, but from the standpoint of the diving facility, from the locker room facility, strength and conditioning within that facility so they don't have to go someplace else. Those are all things that impact their ability to be successful, not only as an athlete, but as a student because of the impact on their time.
Do we know whether Pegula actually changed the bottom line of the hockey program because of the number of fans?
Oh, it absolutely has. But you know, a building is also expensive. A newer building sometimes is more expensive to run. So there have been a lot of plus. But from a revenue production standpoint, absolutely.
Can you comment on the potential impact? We obviously have a world-class women's volleyball program, but new locker rooms. And does it make a difference?
I think it makes a difference on a couple of different levels. We talk a lot about recruiting.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt there's an impact from a recruiting standpoint. We're talking about decisions that 17 and 18-year-olds make when they visit campus, and they compare facilities to other places they go. But I actually like to lead with today's student athlete because I think it makes a difference from the standpoint of how they feel about themselves. You know, you walk in our new volleyball locker room, and our student athletes in that program carry themselves a little bit taller, knowing that we've invested, that the Penn State family has invested, whether it's been philanthropically or it's been as a university. And then the other part about facilities that that impacts today's student athletes we've already talked about, which is the efficiency of their time. That's a lot of what the Lash building project currently is about, is being able to have our student athletes all in one locker room space, and then having all of the aspects of their athletic day right around them, all within arm's length.
And Scott, could I roughly just say that you'd wander around and say, these are the oldest ones and they're the worst?
Not necessarily.
Okay,
No.
so how do you go about sitting there and assessing a particular facility? And if you don't mind, have you wandered around and looked at a lot of these?
We have wandered around every facility that's on campus for athletics.
Okay, so I enjoy watching men and women's soccer.
Yeah.
So take that as an example. What are you looking at? Why are you looking at it?
We'll take a step back. So it's a very comprehensive process. So we start to collect all the data on all the facilities, all the plans, all of the facility analysis reports. We have consultants that work with us that also walk through all the buildings to kind of get an independent assessment of the status of the structural system or the mechanical systems or just the functionality of different spaces. Then we start to have interviews with coaches and the student athletes and all the administrators to understand what's working well and not working well. So that way we can collect all this data, and then we start to create this huge matrix of kind of, what the priorities are in women's volleyball and what are the priorities in swimming and what are the priorities in tennis. So, and as an example, Jeffrey Field, there's a lot of history at Jeffrey Field.
Yeah.
But when you actually go to a game there aren't any permanent concession stands. There aren't any permanent restrooms. There isn't even asphalt or concrete to walk on. It's a compacted gravel, and there are no facilities for the teams at halftime or pregame, so they go into a tent to have a pregame warm-up or a pregame meeting or a halftime meeting.
But the finest playing surface in all of America.
But
is on that field.
The field
Is on that
surface
field.
is
The field seems
it's
beautiful to me.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And even the press facilities, and now that with the Big Ten Network and desire for more content on the network, because the content to put Penn State on the network is something we want to see happen for all of our Olympic sports, because it's more exposure, more people become aware of what Penn State's doing and its successes in athletics, and that leads to it's a window to the university. They learn more about all the academic successes. And
so now this is something I haven't heard about. Big Ten Network, of course, is a big deal for our athletes, and this commitment to the Olympic sports and to make sure that's coverage. So not every facility we have is suitable to set up for the network.
Correct.
So
They all need to be technologically adapted or available for the Big Ten Network. Obviously, lights. I think we're there from a light standpoint, but it has to be technologically suitable to be telecast from an infrastructure standpoint.
makes a big difference.
yeah.
Makes a big difference. How long will that process take for you to gather all that data?
So our goal is to be complete with this by an initial draft in the spring, and so that it can be used in the strategic plan and the budgeting purposes for athletics for next year. So we have to be done kind of early summer next year.
As well, we know it'll be a huge part of the
capital campaign.
athletics portion of the capital campaign.
Yeah.
And so we need to be ready we need to have a vision.
You really
prepared for
want to
July.
sit down with a donor and say, here's what we would like this to be. Do you want your name on
Absolutely.
it? Yeah.
And the impact that has on our student athletes, on our ability to succeed not only programmatically or team-wise, but for individual student athletes, and what impact that has on their Penn State experience.
So, and of course, Pegula, this was a magnificent gift from the Pegulas that created this as a facility. But even the locker rooms for women's volleyball, this was a philanthropic gift.
Absolutely, and there's no doubt that that philanthropy will play a huge role in us being able to fulfill whatever the master plan turns out to be. Beaver Stadium has captured a lion's share of the ink around our facilities master plan, and there's no doubt that Beaver Stadium is an iconic facility and is a place where the Penn State family gathers in large numbers. But we're talking about over 20 facilities here We're talking about every physical infrastructure that impacts students, student athletes, and we know that we have a lot of passionate fans and alumni and community members around our wrestling program, around our track program, around our volleyball programs, and tennis and golf and swimming, softball, baseball, you name it. And every one of those programs has needs. Unfortunately, the world of higher education and intercollegiate athletics within that is moving very quickly, and we need to get up to speed.
Is what coaches tell you when you interview them, is it all very similar? Or is there a lot of
from school to
specific
school or
things?
from sport to sport? No, sometimes there are general things that start to come out that you hear from all the coaches. They'll start to say the same thing. It could be around the idea of nutrition. Like if we had a facility that we could do a better job of providing the right nutrition to our student athletes. You hear stories about how student athletes don't eat breakfast because of time constraints, or don't eat dinner because they practiced and then the dining hall was closed. And when you hear these things and you think about all these 850 student athletes, and you think, of course they're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But then you find out that there's
Some of them aren't.
They're not.
They don't have time.
So sometimes you do kind of have a lot of comments about the same topic. And then we get specific into the actual sport or the competition venue or the training complex that they're in, and what's working well and what's not working well, and what are your highest priorities. And because we know we have to be good stewards of the resources, the limited resources that any university has to kind of put towards a project like this.
So this isn't Cadillac for everyone. This is
about a
Mercedes for
vision.
everyone. This is about a vision and prioritizing what it is.
And this is about true needs that get to the priorities we've
get to
talked
the
about,
meat of-
which are how do we create the very best and most effective conditions for success for student athletes, and then how do we allow or most easily allow our community to connect with this university via an athletic event.
So now you've done this before, Notre Dame, Cal. What did you learn?
Well, we did a master plan at Notre Dame, which is frankly where I really experienced firsthand the value of taking the time and the expense to do a master plan, because it really gives you the whole vision so that you're not getting whipped around by, oh, we needed this, we needed that, or no, this is the plan. It's been well thought out. So we did that at Notre Dame. It still lives today, which I think is a testament to it. And they've done a lot of construction. It also, as you've already referenced, gives donors, gives community something to look at and understand the vision. At Cal, it was around our football stadium renovation. And I think a great success from a community and a program standpoint. And probably the one thing I walked away with that is about creating spaces for the community to gather, and where they can connect, and really powerful stuff.
So let's switch in the last couple minutes that we have. Let's switch to the stadium, because that's gotten lion share of attention. And I had an alum said, Eric, you build a new stadium, I want my seats to be sitting here suspended in air, because this is where I'm going to be when I watch a football game, which tells you something about the passion of Beaver Stadium. So why even think about anything other than renovating Beaver Stadium?
Why? Well, when you start to look at facilities that have been around for a long time, and you start to look at all their infrastructure needs and the needs to modernize them, sometimes when you do the comparative analysis against a new building, you'll find that the cost is the same or very similar to build a new building of some type compared to trying to renovate a building that would be very difficult and costly to renovate.
And where you make sacrifices in terms of what you want
and that's
from
what
a
Minnesota
program
decided.
standpoint.
They decided the new one was better than renovating the old one.
Exactly. And so in the analysis of Beaver Stadium, I mean, part of what we do besides design is we build consensus on campuses as well. And so sometimes you have to do the analysis.
I'll send you the name of the alum. But just so we're clear, Sandy, what's your preference?
Well, there's no doubt that the preference is to renovate Beaver Stadium. it occupies such an iconic place in our history. And obviously, I've been here a little bit over a year. I still have lots to learn. That one I don't need to learn. I understand there's so many memories that have been created, and that's so important to this community, and I totally get that. But the analysis that Scott was talking about has to be done. Mm-hmm. We have to understand the various costs and what we're giving up or what we're sacrificing in a renovation versus new in terms of being able to implement a program.
So this is just wise financial planning to make sure we're making the right choices. So if you just said in a few words what you hope to have at the end of this master planning.
Well, I think first and foremost it's world-class conditions for success for our student athletes. They are number one. They're our priority. But then secondly, facilities that our community, our alumni, the Penn State family want to come to and feel very connected back to their campus in.
And is Populous going to deliver that?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for being my guest. I learned a lot and quite enjoyable. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Next up on Higher Education in Focus, I'll talk one-on-one with President Barron about how the athletics master plan will impact students. How do you hope that this new athletic program really helps the Penn State student body?
Yeah, so actually there's a lot of ways students fit into it. From a town hall to get input. Populous told me that they're interviewing students to understand the types of experiences that they want to have. Success for athletes, student athletes who have gifts physically as well as mentally. That's why they're here at Penn State, to have them have the best type of experience. And then if you sit there and watch, you take an example like Pegula. I went to Greenberg many times, and it was cold, and it was, kind of rough, and not a great opportunity for students. They're standing along the edges, and now you compare that with the student experience that is in Pegula, and it's wonderful. That whole zone there is so. As far as I can tell, this enriches everybody's experience, and it brings an even stronger group of student athletes here. And then what happens when that occurs? Women's volleyball, it's packed. Wrestling, it's packed. Ice hockey, it's packed. And so this is just great success for everybody as far as I can tell, if we do it right.
So you think that these improvements in all the 19 facilities will help attendance at maybe some of the less popular sporting events? Sometimes men's hockey versus women's hockey, you see a very different crowd. So
yeah.
I think that will help improve?
I think it will in many ways. You say even on the academic side of things that good leadership, you could say that was a great coach, good facilities, and a great faculty, and you have superior programs that attract even a stronger set of students. So success does beget success in many ways.
One of the big questions of this is really money and time with everything.
True.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you think that this will have almost a negative impact on the students who so happen to be attending during all the renovation and construction that would be happening?
Yeah, I would say it would depend. Okay, so you look at Pegula, it was built right next to Greenberg. Didn't affect anybody in the middle of it. There'll be other cases where you look at it and a field has to be where a field is, and you will have to suffer through some changes. Many times we work to do that in between season to be as fast as possible. Stadiums like Beaver would be the hardest to do that. Usually the outcome is a good one. Money, we're in many ways driven by philanthropy. The Pegulas set ice hockey on its path. What just happened with the locker rooms in women's volleyball, philanthropy becomes a huge part of this. This also means because we pay attention to dollars, we have to prioritize everything. This isn't, okay, there's the ultimate goal, let's do it. It doesn't work that way.
So along with funds, would students see if any changes in their tuition costs or in activity fees? Would this really affect students in terms of financially affording this plan?
Okay, so this is one place where tuition dollars do not cross into athletics. They do not. And we never want to change that. Athletics is self-supporting. The revenues they get from ticket sales, the revenues that we get from media contracts, they stand on their own. So we have to continue that. What might happen with cost of ticket? Numbers are harder to come by, but it'll be a choice, won't it?
Do you think it would positively or negatively impact students' ability to afford some of the games? I know a lot of students, it's very competitive to get the football tickets, but
right.
Some might want to get the hockey, but might have to make a choice.
Hopefully not, and hopefully it's not the students that it's coming.
Awesome. Can you tell me a little bit about, a ripple effect? If the improvements with the athletics happen, could that possibly improve academics and in that kind of work hard, play hard? You have fun at the game on Saturday, more fun possibly with the new facilities. Could that possibly go into other areas of the university?
It could, but here's the Penn State attitude. We've got something that's great, how do we make it better? We've got something that's great, how do we make it even better? And in making it better, we become even stronger. And this is across the full spectrum. And I don't care whether it's having a great history program or having a great applied research program or fundamental physics or what our athletes experience. This is an institution focused on excellence. We need to keep it that way.
Thank you so much. On behalf of Penn State President Eric Barron, we'd like to thank our guests, Penn State Director of Athletics Sandy Barber, and Populous Senior Principal Scott Radisik. For Higher Education in Focus, I'm Lauren Doyle. Thanks for joining us.
Support for Higher Education in Focus comes from the Penn State Alumni Association, serving alumni and alma mater for more than 145 years. On the web at alumni.psu.edu. Penn State Bookstore, now in an expanded location in the Hub Robeson Center. Improving the student experience at Penn State with philanthropic support of student causes throughout the university. PSECU, a credit union providing financial services to its members throughout Pennsylvania since 1934. More at psecu.com. And from viewers like you, thank you.
The coming years will bring a number of changes to Penn State intercollegiate athletics.
Beaver Stadium is an iconic facility and is a place where the Penn State family gathers in large numbers. But we're talking about over 20 facilities here. We're talking about every physical infrastructure that impacts students, student athletes.
Tackling the athletics master plan on the next Higher Education in Focus.